Reading Workshop, Unit 2, Characterization. What makes a character live? We can all remember reading about someone, real or fictitious, who seemed to come to life on the page. We can imagine what that character might say or do and can probably describe what he or she looks like. We can even imagine meeting that person and having a conversation. With a group of classmates, think of several memorable characters from books or movies. Describe each one, including details about appearance and personality. Then consider the following questions. Why does this character stand out in your memory? How do other people feel about this character? What do you know about how this person thinks and acts? Okay, so in this unit, we're going to look at analyzing character traits and motivation, identify and analyze different types of characters, understand the methods writers use to develop characters, analyze the relationship between plot, right? Plot and character. So Unit 1 was plot, Unit 2, character. And for writing, we're actually going to be writing an autobiographical narrative. So you are the character. Okay, and some academic vocabulary. Say it after me. Character traits. Character traits. Motivation. Motivation. Characterization. Characterization. Connotation. Connotation. And denotation. Denotation. Generalizations. Generalizations. Inferences. Inferences. And author's perspective. So those are some of the words you'll see on Quizlet for this unit. Okay, so we're on page 160 and 161 in your book. This is a literary analysis workshop, analyzing characters. Let's read this together. I'll read aloud. I'm going to leave some words out. Please fill in the blanks. Analyzing characters. Slovenly manners, a magnetic personality, a competitive streak. These are the kinds of qualities that can shape your impressions of other people. For example, an egomaniac is probably not someone you would want as a friend. But finding out why that person behaves the way he or she does might change your opinion. So why? Finding out why they act that way. Characters in literature can be just as complicated as real people. By closely analyzing characters, you can get more out of the stories you read and gain insights into human nature. So it makes the story more interesting to you and you learn about people. So part 1, character development. Okay, so we're taking notes, right? So this is the overview, the introduction. Now this is a section heading. So have that down in your notes. What are we going to learn about character development? Remember what's in your notes you may use on a test. And I'm going to go down to this chart. I love this chart. This is great. So we talk about round characters and flat characters. We also talk about dynamic characters and static characters. So there's different ways to talk about characters and characterization. Let's look at these two. A round character. Like if we say, you are a well-rounded person. We mean what? You have some sports that you do, some music that you play an instrument, you speak a couple of languages, perhaps you've traveled to different places. You're well-rounded. You have many qualities to you. Okay, so if a character is rounded, we then say they are complex. They show different traits, a variety of traits, a well-rounded character. They have a range of emotions. The character is not always angry, always happy, always one emotion. Just like us as human beings, we have many different emotions that we feel throughout each day. We display strengths and weaknesses, don't we? Well, so do well-rounded characters. They have their strengths and their weaknesses. And round characters often change over the course of the story. And I'm going to circle that right there. And I'm going to give you the word I just gave you earlier. The word is dynamic. So a round character changes, which means they are dynamic. Like dynamite changes things. When it explodes, it goes boom. A dynamic character changes throughout a story. So what is their role in the story? They serve as main characters who make a story rich and interesting. Okay? And they help to define the theme. So generally this round character is the main character that does the action, is part of the main parts of the plot. And so their journey is what tells us the theme, what shows the theme to us. What's the author's message? Okay, so that's a round character. Now, on the other hand, a flat character only has one or two traits. For example, think about Goldilocks, the big bad wolf, the wicked stepsisters in Cinderella. These are flat characters. They're not round characters. They just have one or two traits. They're self-centered, they're greedy, they're mean. There's just one or two traits that define them. And they only show a few emotions. They don't have a full range of emotions the way a real human being does. And they may be stereotypes. Say this word, stereotype, or stock characters. The stepsisters are an example of stock characters. We can find characters like that in several different books. Okay, or movies. And these characters don't grow and they don't change. We call them static. Okay, the word for that is static. Static characters do not grow or change. And their role in the story, they are not usually the main character, they're the minor characters. And they help advance the plot or they provide information. They also reveal something about the main character. So the main character interacts with these flat characters. And the main character, we then learn more about them by how he or she talks and thinks and acts toward these other less developed characters. Okay, there's a lot of information there. Very solid, important information for you to know. I'm going to go back up, and we're going to see a lot of that is already covered. A lot of what we just said is already covered by what I said just now. So right here, how do writers describe characters? What do they look like? What do they do? What do they think? What do they say? And what do other characters do, think, or say about them? That's how we learn about characters. And I'm going to give you a couple more words that you need to know in a literature class. Let's say you want to get an AP or you want to do well in your class next year as well as this year. Let me give you a couple more words. So, let me go red, choose a different color. Okay, if the author tells you through the character's appearance, their actions, their thought, and their speech, we call that direct characterization. Direct, okay? If we get characterization through other characters and how they react or what they say about the main character, that's going to be indirect. So direct and indirect characterization. Okay, I guarantee you that's something you need to know. Direct characterization, what does that character say, do, or think, or how do they look? And sometimes the physical appearance, though, can be indirect because the other characters either say, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you looking like this?" And then that would be indirect. Okay. I'm here now. By examining these characterization techniques, these are the techniques, you can infer a character's traits or qualities, such as insecurity or bravery. So what do they do that shows you that they're brave? For example, what can you infer about this character from the following sentences? Elena eyed her teammates critically. Am I the only one who knows how to play this game? She thought. So this is what she did, and this is what she thought. So what do we know about Elena? Okay, so she's critical, a little self-centered. Perhaps she really is the best, but she isn't a very good teammate the way she's thinking these things. Okay, the extent to which a writer develops a character depends on the character's role in the story. And as we just said, round characters tend to be the center of the story, and they're the most lifelike. And flat characters are usually not the main character. Great. Let's look on the next page. Okay, so we're going to look at an example to look at character traits. Now the question is, how do Mrs. Wilson's thoughts about her daughter affect your impression, not only of the daughter, but also of Mrs. Wilson herself? Okay, so her thoughts about her daughter are what we call indirect characterization. But her thoughts are also direct characterization because they tell the reader about the thinker, Mrs. Wilson. Okay, let's read. Mrs. Wilson sometimes thought that her daughter Elise was dumb. Elise was her only daughter, her only child. But Mrs. Wilson was not so blinded by love that the idea that Elise might be stupid did not occasionally cross her mind. The girl's father had died when she was 8. Mrs. Wilson had never remarried, and the girl and her mother lived affectionately and closely. When Elise was a child, she had been responsive and lively, but as she grew into adolescence, as her body matured, her disposition changed, and some of the wonderful clarity of her spirit was lost. At 16, she seemed indolent, and to have developed a stubborn indifference to the hazards and rewards of life. So based on Mrs. Wilson's thoughts about her daughter, how would you describe Elise? Okay, she says she's stupid, but she said when she was a child, she was happy, right? And that as she became a teenager, she changed, and some of her happiness is gone. And now she seems very stubborn and indifferent. Also pay attention to this. Her dad died. Okay? That might have a role here. What do Mrs. Wilson's thoughts reveal about the kind of mother she is? Cite details to support your answer. Would you say that this is a loving mother? Okay, she herself says she was not blinded by love. She thinks Elise might be stupid, right? She calls her stupid. Let's see what else. Dumb. Her spirit is gone, lost. She's indolent, stubborn indifference. Positive or negative? Negative. Okay. The fact that the mother doesn't seem to connect the death of the father to the daughter's changing from being a happy child to an unhappy child or an unhappy teenager kind of tells us that this mother isn't really that plugged in to her daughter and her daughter's experiences. Okay, so let's look at another example. Okay, make sure you've written something down for the opportunity. Model 2, round and flat characters. So here there's a man named Caesar, and he reflects on the unfortunate turn his life has taken. As you read, pay attention to Caesar's thoughts about his son. Okay. From A Place Where the Sea Remembers, a novel by Sandra Benitez. When he was 21, he had married Concha Ojeda. It was she who had allowed him to turn himself over to the sea. But now Concha was gone, and in the months since the accident, the boy had gone mute and was clearly in decline. The boy needed a mother's love. He needed a father's strength, and there was none of one and little left of the other. Caesar thought of Concha's sister who lived in Oaxaca. She had asked for the boy. She would raise him with her own, she had said at the wake. Since that time, Cesar Burgos had agonized over his sister-in-law's offer, and there were moments when he thought he would have to let the boy go. He turned to his son, who sat at the table. "Why don't you speak?" Caesar cried, heart surging up his neck and into his cheeks. I'm going to give you a moment to read that again on your own. And our two questions. Is Caesar a round or a flat character? Give, cite, details to support your answer. Is he round or flat? Do we know several things about Caesar now? We know who he married, that his wife had died, his child is mute, he doesn't feel strong, he's not sure about letting the aunt raise the boy, he's agonizing over it, and he speaks to the son, his heart, right? I think he said heart. His heat surging up his neck and into his cheeks. Okay, so he has more than one emotion. He is more complex, I would say. So is he a flat character or a round character? Right, he's a round character. Reread the boxed text. What do you learn about Cesar from his thoughts about his sister-in-law's offer? He thought of Concha's sister who lived in Oaxaca. She'd asked for the boy. She would raise him with her own, she had said at the wake. Since that time, Cesar Burgos had agonized. Okay, that's a really big clue right there. Agonized over the offer. And there were moments when he thought he would have to do it. So what does that tell us about him? Right? He wants to do the right thing. Okay, but he's not sure what the right thing is. Does he love this boy? Okay. So make sure you have some notes for Model 2. Round and flat characters, a place where the sea remembers. Okay, we're looking at page 162 and 163. Part 2 is character behavior. So once you understand who the characters are, the next questions concern why they act a certain way and how they change. Attempting to answer these questions not only takes you deeper into the story, but also brings you closer to understanding the complexity of human behavior, including your own. Let's read this again together. Let me hear all of your voices. Once you understand who the characters are, the next question concerns why they act a certain way and how they change. Attempting to answer these questions not only takes you deeper into the story, but also brings you closer to understanding the complexity of human behavior, including your own. Beautiful. Okay, so here's an important word for this unit. Motivation. Everyone say motivation. Why does a character act that way? Motivation. Oh, I just crossed it out. I meant to underline it. Let's try that again. Motivation. Okay, so character motivation. And if you look over at the side, you see the word motives. So here's the character. What's the motive and what's the resulting action? Is the motive that they're starving? They don't have enough to eat, therefore they steal money. Or is the motive they want to buy something for themselves that they don't need? And the resulting action is the same. They steal money. So the motive makes a big difference here, how we view the character. Are we sympathetic to this character? Or are we angry at this character for violating somebody else's life by stealing from them? Okay, so what prompted the man to steal a large sum of money? A character's motivation, the reasons behind his or her actions. What does motivation mean? The reasons behind his or her actions, write it down, can affect your perception. Okay, remember this word from 7 Habits? Perception. How do you see it? Right? 2 eyes. How do you see the character? For instance, the man might steal money to feed his family or achieve a lifelong dream of wealth. How do these reasons affect your opinion of him? Right? Obviously, sympathetic, not so sympathetic. We say, oh, poor guy, or what a jerk, right? Okay, so sometimes the character's motivation is stated directly in the story. The author tells you why the character did it. That's called direct motivation. Usually, though, you need to look for clues and details to try to figure out the motivation. As you read, pay attention to the narrator's direct comments about a character's motivation. We talked about this before, the character's actions, thoughts, and their values, and your own insight into human behavior. You are a human being, therefore you know something about being a human being. Oops. Okay, so I introduced this to you earlier. Static and dynamic characters. In addition to knowing why a character acts a certain way, it is important to analyze how a character changes as a result of the events in a story. A character may grow emotionally, they may learn a lesson, or they may change. They may alter their behavior. Characters who change and grow as the plot develops are called dynamic characters. In contrast, characters who remain the same are called static characters. So, strategies for analyzing character change. So, first examine the change. Compare how a character was at the beginning of the story with how he or she is at the end. Then analyze the meaning. What lesson does the character learn? What insight does he or she gain? So, compare beginning to end. And that's a very common essay assignment. I know that you'll encounter this in American literature next year, comparing how a character is at the beginning to how they are at the end. Next question. Is the change external? Like, did they change how they look, their appearance? Are their circumstances different? Think of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Charlie starts off very poor, but by the end of the book, he owns the entire chocolate factory, so he's very rich. His circumstances have changed. Or is it an internal change of attitude or belief? I think of A Christmas Carol with Scrooge, okay? At the beginning, Scrooge doesn't care about other people. He doesn't care that he makes them work on a holiday. He doesn't care they're cold. But by the end, he has a change of attitude, and he starts to become a more considerate, helpful human being. And if that's the case, does the change show personal growth, or does it lead to the character's downfall? In other words, did the character change to become a better person? Okay. Or did it lead them down, down, down? Okay. What factors or events contributed to or caused the change? So why? What happened? What made them change? Okay. So with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Willy Wonka gave him the factory because Charlie was not a selfish, greedy boy. He was a kind, sweet, gentle boy. And in The Christmas Carol, Scrooge has 3 ghosts that scare him good. And he decides to change his life before it's too late. So would the character be motivated to change without the contributing factors? Okay. Okay. So there you go. Some important questions for analyzing characterization. Okay, so we have 2 more models. You're going to hear me read the model aloud, then I'm going to give you time to read it again on your own and find answers to the 2 side questions. So model 1, character motivation. Okay, from Initiation, a short story by Sylvia Plath.